A very good evening. Well, welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Norman Goodfellows, and welcome to Scotland, which is where I find myself, as usual, at this time of year. If you've been watching the show over the last, 7-8 years now, you'll know that Dan Really Likes Wine comes to you from the Alfred Dunhill Links Championships on a couple of occasions at this time of year. I'm here to host the tournament, to host the events around it, do a bit of television work, and soak in the atmosphere of one of the great sporting events. Not necessarily a few of them around at the moment, be it the Ryder Cup, the Rugby World Cup, a Cricket World Cup that gets underway this week. This particular week is extra special, bringing together a range of world-class golfers. A number of those Ryder Cup stars will be here this week. Celebrities from all over the world, both of a sporting nature and an entertainment nature. Some rather influential businessmen, and a rich streak of South Africa, which adds a wonderfully familiar touch to this particular event. It is the tournament of Johan Rupert, and that means not only do we see his love of golf and his broad love of sport manifested, but also his love of wine. And so his own range of wine, overseen by Gareth Robertson and team, is on show this week. And it's a great opportunity for people from around the world to try some South African wine, to experience it, to realize just how good it is, and then head back to wherever they come from in the world and take with them a newly discovered or a renewed love of South African wine. And so both today and on Thursday, we'll be trying some of the wine that is seen and enjoyed at the tournament this year. And that wine includes not just Johan's own ranges, but also wines from a number of his friends, including one of his closest friends, Schalk Burger Senior, the man behind Velbedacht. And he is going to be with us today. He's just come off the golf course, shot 63 today, apparently, is the rumor I'm hearing. We'll confirm that with him shortly. And not only will we talk golf with Kurt Schalk, who's both a dear friend of mine, but also a wonderful ambassador at large for this particular tournament. We'll talk about the wine that he's making, including a rather special wine. It might be a tier or two, because this is a wine that pays tribute to somebody who, although gone, has left behind an enormous legacy, and one that feeds into another special event happening this week. And then what would we be if we didn't have a conversation about rugby with a great Springbok, whose great Springbok son is also here this week making his debut, Schalk Burger Junior, playing the Links tournament for the very first time. So in just a moment, Kurt Schalkberger of Velbedacht and Springbok fame is our very special guest on Dan Really Likes Wine with Norman Goodfellows. Before, though, we get into wine, rugby and golf with Scala, let's have a quick look at this week's news. This is up this week. This is a really big week, and it's one that it's always the same week as the Alfred Dunhill Links Championship, so I always have to watch from afar. Probably saves me a bit of money not being there and just watching it online. It's the Cape Winemakers Guild auction, and in the build-up, it is the Protégé auction, and this is a really important space. These are young winemakers who, through the Guild Trust, have had the opportunity to, over 3 years, work with different winemakers, different guild members, and lead into their own winemaking careers. And if you look at some of the guild protégés who've come through that platform, people like Rutger van Wyk out at Stark Conde, Kiara Scott making some really interesting and exciting wine at the moment at Brookdale. You've got really dozens of young winemakers, people like Thornton Pele out at Bruce Jack at the moment, who are all making exciting wine and who all did exactly what this year's protégés are doing for the auction, creating their very first wines, or at least one of their earliest wines, and putting them up for sale. So not only are they really interesting wines, they're the chance to have wines from people who in the next 10, 15 years will be pretty big names in the wine industry if past progress is anything to go by. And it is also the opportunity to support the Cape Winemakers Guild Trust and the work they do in nurturing, supporting, and developing the next generation of young South African winemakers. So online to Strauss, where you can also be online for this weekend's main auction, but the chance to get some wine will be a little cheaper, very exciting, and the guide as to which winemakers to keep an eye on in years to come. Now, this is about time. Luke Dale Roberts has finally brought out a book, testament to the test kitchen, that restaurant that had such an impact, not just on the South African culinary scene, but global You're one of the very few South African restaurants to have featured in the top 50 of the world's best 50 restaurants. Luke has expanded from then to a number of others, the Potluck Club and Short Market being the two big names at the moment. The Test Kitchen is gone for now. I think there might be a rebirth at some point, but you can go back in time and relive a wonderful, wonderful culinary space and the artist behind it through Luke Dale Roberts' The Test Kitchen, a testament, and that is now out, and one you should really be looking to add to your food and wine library. And this is Helderberg Fresh. This happens out of Lawrenceford Estate. It's on the 25th of November. Somerset West, your chance to have a bit of a party out in Somerset West. Last year's one was terrific. It brings together not just the estates of the region, headlined by Lawrenceford, but also some great chefs, some great food, music, generally sunshine. We can't guarantee, but it's likely. And just a really nice afternoon of laid-back indulgence. Helderbergfresh.coza if you'd like to join the garden party in Somerset West. And then this is Stellenbosch Wine Routes, their soirees, which are kicking off from the 22nd of November. It's an evening strolling through the streets of Stellenbosch. 190 Rand gets you a glass as well as 10 tasting tokens. And it's just a lot of funness. It's really relaxed. That street party feel. Stellenbosch generally has a street party feel to it at the moment, given that every second building in Stellenbosch is a wine bar. But this is a little more structured, taking over the streets and having a wander through downtown Stellenbosch. Drink some wine, have some food, and enjoy some time in one of the more beautiful wine and food corners of the planet. So add that one to your diary as well. All right, well, there we go. That allows me to say a very warm welcome on the back of all of that to a dear friend of mine, a fellow golfer, a fellow wine drinker, a fellow rugby fan, and a man who's, I believe, delivered another annoyingly effortless round of golf today. Schalk Burger Senior, welcome back to the show.
Well, always nice to be with you, Dan. Well, fantastic always to be at St Andrews. I mean, just walking around there and just thinking what's what happened here, you know, in the past, and to think that this course, there was no bulldozer who built this course. You know, everything was as alive the land, and to be able to walk around there, and just reminds me of the wonderful places in the world.
I was talking to my driver on the way in from the airport from Edinburgh this morning. He used to work at St Andrews Links. He's been involved going back to the times of the Alfred Dunhill Cup, when it was the international teams competition. Yeah. We go back 3 decades or thereabouts in terms of Alfred Dunhill and golf here at St Andrews and surrounds. For people who aren't too familiar with it, before we go into the wine and the rugby and a bit more of the golf for this year, this is, even by the standards of golf at St Andrews, a really, really special week.
No, it is, and I was very lucky to be here the year that Ernie and Retief and David Frost won the Dunhill Cup. I would like to say what happened, everything that evening out of celebration, and we fell into the Rodale bunker. But I mean, it was a great celebration. So, and that used to be a fantastic competition because it was on stroke play, and obviously every match had to end at the 18th, and obviously some of the matches went on to the second, and then again the first, again the 18th. So all the spectators got to see a final round, and then from there into where we now with the links. The pro-am, it's just this is like the annual sabbatical to me.
And it's one in which you are surrounded by old friends, many of whom you enjoy a glass of wine. And we'll talk about some of those old and new friends this year, because there's a new member of the family joining the event. We've also got some wine to talk about, but let's get the rugby out of the way, because it is a very pressing topic. There is still a slight mathematical chance that the Springboks might not be in the quarterfinals, but by and large, it looks a fairly good bet. What is Schalk Burger's take on the World Cup as a whole, South Africa in particular, the tournament thus far?
Yeah, look, I mean, we've got a great team. We've actually, I don't even think the coaches know who's the best 15. You know, if I'm going to put it that way, because we've all got, different opinions. And, Doc Craven had a wonderful saying. He said, if rugby is not a debate anymore, it will have no future. We don't debate how we must play and who must play and who must be the best tight end prop. Bringing 4 scrum-offs here and C1. The only way that get a grant to play is on the wing. Now, I think up till now, we've had our bad luck. I was unlucky there in Paris when it took place. And I think we're there, you know, and once you get into the knockouts, mathematically and statistically, we can fall out. But I don't think the Irish and the Scots will work that one fully out, you know. But Saturday night at the championship dinner, I think there can be a lot of people rather watching rugby than listening to the speeches at the championship dinner. So, and then once you get into the quarterfinals, I think it's, you know, it's a knockout. So at this point in time, it's looking like France, and then from there, anything goes. So you've got to play, the one big thing, you've got to play winning rugby, and you win with 1 point. Now, if you think in 95, 2007, the first 2 times that South Africa won World Cup, no prize was scored. It was all kicks or drop kicks that did it. So that lets you think you've got to take the points. We've got to start taking the points. There are no bonus points when you get into quarterfinals and semi-finals. And you win with 1 point. That's what I say to everybody. 1 point can be just that little drop or that little penalty. So hopefully Rassie and them are listening to that. And then they can select the rest of the guys. And if you want to play bully rugby, which we can, let's play it in their 22. Let's not do it in our half. Let's get there. Let's use long kicks, or maybe let's get Nas back to just kick us there. But maybe even I was just thinking the other day, you know, they're changing rugby so much now. Why don't we just have a kicker that comes off the bench? You know, that'll suit us now fine. Put Pollard on the side, then just bring him up for the kicks, and we can go on. Because we've got to win. We've got to win.
Well, look, I wouldn't put it past Rassie to do something like that. He's a very inventive and different sort. Part of a rugby community that you've been a part of for many, many years. But over the last few weeks, both in person and social media, I've seen a lot of interaction with yourself, a lot of your former colleagues, the friends you've made through rugby. And much like golf, there is that lifelong sense of camaraderie that comes together. And that links to rather nicely to a very special wine that we've got here. And it's a wine that celebrates somebody who's sadly no longer with us, but I know you knew well, and I know his legacy you are so supportive of. Here we have Dodie number 5. Tell us what this is and who this is for.
Well, you know, Kenny Logan, you know, is at this point in time cycling. He took off from Edinburgh last week, and he's taking this Cap Classic, and he's also taking the match ball of Saturday. And that's going to be presented at the match. And a few years ago, we thought, you know, myself with the company that I helped form, Sporting Wine Club, you know, Simon Halliday, we also played in the Rugby World Cup final. We thought, how could we help Dodie and, you know, the motor neuron disease, you know, and this whole campaign, of which last year, I must say, and congratulate Kenny, whose marketing company's done it. They won the prize as the best charity, you know, a campaign in the whole of the UK. So we first made a red blend, which was 5 cultivars, which I wrote a piece that won an award here, where I related the 5 cultivars to the different positions, you know, the forward, the front row, the hooker, the locks, the eighthman, and the flanks. Those were the 5. And it went down very well. And up to this stage, I think we've contributed now just over £40,000 into the foundation. And what was also very nice at that stage, you know, Boris Johnson at that stage added, I think, £15 million into the whole motor neuron, and they celebrated that with a bottle of Dodie's red blend. And then the idea came about doing, you know, a sparkling, a bubbly, or champagne, whatever you call it. And what's very interesting about this, you'll see the label is the tartan, the Ware tartan. And the label, the original label, was also painted by a wonderful young guy, Henry Fraser.
Oh, he's the mouth artist.
Mouth artist,
yes.
Exactly. And he played for the Sarries junior teams, and then had a very tragic accident in Portugal and became quadriplegic. And he's now a mouth artist, and he's so he painted the logo. So you know, and we changed it a bit, like the ball situation, and it's really been, how can I say, a work of passion. The first one was in you know, the red blend we did within COVID, which was difficult to get stuff printed and so forth. And the label, the logo passed and the label. But it's been so close. And the sad thing about this is that Dottie went into the coma just before this was released at the last match. But the red blend, we had a virtual, launch. And he was battling to get the glass to his mouth, and he said, "Please get this wine in my mouth. I've got to taste this wine." And in such a moment of what can you call it, anguish. So it was just nice that we as lock forwards could go out, and on Thursday night for the tasting, we're actually presenting this as well. And we've got a little postcard about it, and it's just, and again, like you say, it was just nice to be able to reciprocate for a terrible disease that reached a beautiful man, and what he's done for motor neuron disease. And we've also had the terrible misfortune with Joost van der Westhuys and Tina Slanini, and it's becoming more prevalent. I don't think people know, and that's why we need research. But that's where it comes from.
Well, it's a lovely addition to this week. It's a lovely story. Yeah. What I'm going to ask you to do while I get some glasses, Schalk Burger sits in the Guinness Book of World Records for a number of things. One of them is having the single largest hands known to man. In fact, we can put them up. I'll put one next to me. So there we go. That's kind of me under the bottom there. With those delicate pianist's fingers of yours, how do you open a bottle of bubbles? Because I'm always interested to see how the winemakers do it. There's someone tell me you must only turn the bottom and not the top. And,
no, there's one important thing. Everybody says you keep the wire on there.
Okay.
Because that gives you a bit of a grip. He says you leave the wire on there, and then you just turn it.
Yeah.
And then just restrain it a little bit, unless you won the Grand Prix or Pindays.
Or a World Cup.
And then you can open it up like that. And then let's share this on old Dottie. This will be fantastic.
Now, the other thing I've done very deliberately, and I think you and I have had this conversation before, but it's worth jumping back into it for just a moment, and that is stemware that we use for bubbles. Traditionally, people tend to think of the flute. For me, I think the flute is great if I've got lots of guests, and then I can give them all a little bit and give myself a big glass. But I generally prefer the bigger glass because it gives me more of a nose of what I'm drinking, and I feel I appreciate the mouth feel of the wine a little more. What's your sense on what we should be pouring bubbles in?
Yeah, I honestly believe a bigger glass like this, lets the wine express itself more. There's bigger surface area.
Yeah.
And wine it's volatile, because it's got alcohol in, and now you've got the bubbles. And you're trying to, being a cup classic, being 12, final fermentation being 12 months in the bottle. You're trying to see, did you get that biscuity, yeasty type of thing, and it's always beautiful. And, wine has come all the way to the UK. How did it travel?
Well, cheers.
Cheers.
This is my first taste.
To Dottie.
To Dottie Weir. That's 100% Chardonnay.
100% Chardonnay. So it's a full, like they say in English, like a, Blanc de Blanc style. The Blanc de Blanc, champagne is 100% Chardonnay. So it's, and it's brut, and it's, it's dry, so it's got to be under 7 grams sugar.
It's a space which I find as fascinating as any at the moment in South Africa, in that certainly up in Johannesburg, you can't make enough nectar. These slightly sweeter versions flying off shelves. A lot of people are a bit younger, finding their way into wine. It's a bit more accessible. But then also at the top end, I look at people like Kroner, who just brought out some site-specific Cup Classique, and a number of the houses who are only making bubbles and nothing more. We seem to be really making a lot of quite exciting progress in terms of both the very best of bubbles, but also broadening the reach and appeal of it.
Yeah, and I mean, we in the UK, and this is the big thing in the UK at present, Elphinstone, Mark Driver and them's big estate, which was actually designed by a South African, and it's got now 300 acres, going up to 600 acres, and it's got only Chardonnay, Petit Meunier, and Petit Pinot Noir. So they really, because they've got the sunlight to really, ripen, late ripening fruit. But the acidities and everything, and the French are not buying into it. They're not just buying into Stellenbosch at present. They buy, because, if you think land in the Champagne Malay area is going for over 3 million euros a hectare, and then, they're buying it for between 120 and 150,000 pounds.
3 million euros a hectare.
Yeah, incredible.
That's 62 trillion rand a square meter.
At school they teach you that noughts got no value. The older you get, you first count the noughts till you see what's in front of it. The noughts tell everything. So no, I think this it's done very well up here. I think we've sold now close to 1,400 cases.
Oh, that's a very good start.
Yeah.
And for a very good cause as well.
Yeah.
It's one that you make not just on your own, and you've got a great team. A little later in the show, we'll talk about one of your sons who's adding to the rugby legacy of the Dunhill. Your other son, the rock star who makes occasional wine, plays a big role. Tell us about working with Tim and having that team back at the farm for producing the wine.
Yeah, look, it's any family business has its ups and downs and so forth, but it's one of those things that if I'm planting vineyards now, hopefully they will outlive me, and then I don't want my grandchildren saying this, but their grandfather, what did he do here? Did he plant the right stuff? Did he make the right wines? So, we in estate, so everything's grown, made and bottled on estate. And what's very important to me is to try and make honest wines that typify, the soil and everything around it. So, and Tian being part of that, he plays a massive role. We've got Christiane Frini now as the chief winemaker, and we've just appointed a wonderful young girl that actually comes from Springbok, whose families are fishing, the real West Coast fishing. And she's an assistant winemaker, and she studied at Wellington, and she did the first 2 practical years with us. So it's taking that legacy forward and saying, what are we wanting to do? And it's great having Tian. He's a hard worker, and he takes a lot of things away from me. Everybody says, "What are you still doing on the farm?" I don't really know. I'm trying to find out myself. That's why I was probably here to find out.
I tell you what you do, which makes you one of the more dangerous people I know. In fact, even more dangerous than you on a rugby field. If you've ever been wine tasting with Schalk, you'll know what I'm talking about. It starts as a 20-minute drop-in for a quick glass, and 4 hours later you're speaking foreign languages and enjoying all sorts of wine. But it's always enjoyed, no matter how much or how little, with this great sense of passion, which I think you've thrown at absolutely everything you've done in your life. It's a driving force behind Schalk the person. And there's also this sense of being inquisitive. I know Rob Lowe always jokingly calls you Google and used to call you Yellow Pages for this voracious appetite for knowledge that you have, but also a sense of exploration. And I think that speaks to the second wine of yours we're going to try today. And it's a varietal that we don't really do a huge amount of in South Africa. I don't think we do nearly enough of, because if I look at some of the Viognier, which is indeed our next wine that I've had, I look in particular Samantha O'Keefe out of Lismore, I think makes of a better Viognier. It's one of those white grapes that most people shy away from because they just don't know what it is. But if they do, and if they've got it a little bit aged and made by the right person, it is one of those white wines that we do particularly well in South Africa.
Yeah, look, Viognier, if you actually think, as a Romal cultivar, and goes through a strange metamorphosis, at a certain stage with nice, good sunlight getting into your canopy, the berry actually goes brown. The first year we started getting it, I said, well, we've got some rot here. We're going to go into like a noble rot. We're going to have to do that. And the grapes were tasting very, very sort of like too sweet. But eventually when we started looking at the Ballings, which are only about 23, 24. So I think what happens is it's a wine that very easily can become big. That's why in small amounts they're actually blended with Syrah, and a lot of your Ronald blends has got Viognier in it. I've got very fond of this. This one specifically, we put into second and third full barrels only for about 8-10 months to just get that bit of oxidative style, get a bit of the reductiveness away from it. And it's become a wonderful food wine, which all of a sudden in South Africa, it actually tastes much sweeter. It's bone dry, but just that incredible, that fruit, that comes through. So
it's always known for its perfume, and it really does have an exotic glass to it, especially when you're trying it for the first time. And then there's also, we often talk about texture in wine, but this is a particular example of that. It's got that layered feel to it, almost laps up like the ocean on a beach as you take it. It washes over that palate beautifully.
Yeah, you see, what's very interesting is that this block, our soils are very decomposed granite. They came in with a very natural low pH, and went actually, basically you could call it wild fermented, went about through the whole fermentation process on its own. So it's still got that nice little bit of underlayer of acidity there, which gives you a mid-upper palate. And then those unique flavors that just, it's nearly like, I don't want to say pineapple or whatever, but you get that
tropical nudge.
It's called tropical, like just layers down with you. And as a food, it was interesting. It's a great food wine because it won't dominate the food, but will add, like any curries or games and stuff like that. It's just a beautiful wine that Theo made this wine all on his own. And I think the oxidative style, many Viennese are just made productive into a tank. But I think that 8 to 10 months in the barrel, the oxidative just gives it a little bit length, and the wine will last. It's something that you can sell it.
One of the highlights of Scottish cuisine, which is not a subject that has always excited the greater culinary world, is a curry. It's not hard to find a good curry house in Scotland, and I think this would be a lovely spot for it. It's also a wine that brings me back to a comment you made earlier in the rugby sets, where you said that you weren't sure if the coaches knew who their best players, what the best team was. We've kind of got something similar in South Africa, that there is just so much wine, so many varietals and combinations thereof that we're doing really well. It's becoming increasingly difficult to put a marker down and say, right, this is the definitive South African wine. And I'd imagine for you as winemakers as well, when you know that there is so much you can do, how to decide where you draw a line in the sand.
Well, Dan, we've just been through that with the single block Cinsault that we brought out, the clay block. Everybody said this name, but clay, fighting wine, but it's all about the block where my labourers had a big fight in, because the one claimed it's because of him that this block is so good, and they had a fight. And all my single vineyard wines I've named after the actual name that my labourers give it, like Schalk Burger Senior and that. And I decided to make this Cinsault in a very much more feminine. I would get the rose petals out of it, really, because it's a bush vine. And many guys are taking Cinsault and they're trying to add 10-15% Cabernet and everything. You take all the red fruit side away from it. And also, if you think Cinsault is technically 50% of the hybrid Pinotage, historically. And then this wine in light color, it's only 12% alcohol. It was totally wild fermented, and it hit the market. And I don't never talk about awards with anyone, but it's just won everything. It's just won the Terroir Awards, top 100, double platinum, and it just shows you that. And a lot of my mates tasting wine, I said, no, this wine's a little bit too feminist to do everything, because everybody looks at me and they say, well, you've got to have a big chassis, you've got to have a big wine, broad and everything. Although I like those fine little hints. And to answer your question, it just shows you there is a place to differentiate. Because I think we're trying to be a bit too conform, to get people to conform to certain standards, be it because all these associations, Syrah, Pinotage, Syrah, and if you're not like this, then 5 years later somebody goes out another, and then they're all there, and you're playing like snakes and ladders. Then you're up top there, and you fall down, and you get up again. And so I think marrying wine like this and the winemaking process to the soil and the fruit, and being an estate, that's it. That's what we do. And I think that in turn, and it will also help because you can have 3-4 different styles of Viognier. And just in a week with Alfred wines, the Cinsault showed dramatically, and our Belgium agents went mad about it because they said this is much better than a bad French Pinot Noir, and at the price, you understand. So then they wanted to buy everything, but it's a single block vineyard. I said to them, you can't take this. You've only got so much. So it's nice when you reach that. Normally, what happens in our industry, you haven't got enough of what the people want. You can make the big bulk volume there, but I think that's what we must be doing. We must be exploring, that real honest, passionate, and saying, "No, like this Viognier." I never thought we would have a Viognier, but it was so good. I said, "Let's bottle it. Let's get it out to the people," and it's been very, very well received.
We're not joined by one Schalk, but in fact 2 on the show. Schalk Burger is watching at the moment, our Pinotage lover. A quality Pinotage and a Cape blend for the win. Cheers from Cape Town. Schalk, good to have you back on the show and watching. I'm going to ask you one final question in that broader space before we nip over to the big gun that's looking at us out the corner of my eye. And that would be the style of wine and the evolution thereof. More and more of the wine that comes into the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar that arrives from winemakers to have a taste of, to bring onto the show, is wine that might a decade ago from the same estate or at least a similar region have been bigger, have been slightly heavier, have been slightly bolder and noisier and louder, a bit more wood, a bit more volume, a bit more shout. Now, a lot of that wine is coming through with more refinement, with more elegance, quieter, and not just a Syrah or a style that naturally can have that element, but even things like Cabernet Sauvignon, I'm finding are not arriving with quite so much noise. Is that something you're picking up on? And if so, what does that say about wine at the moment in South Africa?
Yeah, we had a very interesting session the other night with a few masters of wine here in England, and I took it back into the history. You remember, South Africa was the second largest seller of wine into the UK market prior to isolation and all the trade embargoes and everything. And Australia took that position, and they wanted expressive wines. They made it like Coca-Cola. They would take Syrah 28 barrel and make a syrup and triple X wood on it. And then they would blend it back, and then they would truck it all the way from the Barossa up into the New South Wales area, so then try and give it a good name. And so when we got back into that environment, and the whole story about Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere wines, I think a lot of winemakers thought we must make these expressive Chardonnays, we must make these expressive Syrahs, because Syrahs have actually become more a style versus Syrah, and overly wooded and so forth. And but the French were very clever through that period of time. They just went pure and refined. So the high-priced wines but then we also have a lot of competitions. Obviously, a lot of winemakers want to express themselves through competitions, and there were a lot of bodies with appointed winemakers with bonuses for gold medals. And let's be honest about it. I'm a proprietor. I could talk about it. And what has happened now is that open wine competitions, I think, have also progressed, and they understand that the good wines, the wines that last, many of those wines that are, and there's nothing that masks a fruit fork better than wood, and the wood is actually part of the oxidative process, not so much that you want to add wood to it. And what happened to a lot of those wines, which were made for a competition period, so they were maybe low in sulfurs and stuff like that, to let the wine express itself. In 2-3 years' time, the wine would separate. And you get fruit there, you get wood there and stuff. Whereas the European wines, they lasted. So that's one of the big things now what's happening, to make good, refined, honest wines that can last. Because, the guy paying the premium in the UK, he sells his wines. Other than say, if you buy them, you can finish it and buy again. So they all spend, the guys spend. Every guy here has got big amounts of money he wants to spend for his cellar. Because his cellar is worth money. It's like investing. So yes, you're 100% right. And I think that's come through to South Africa now. And I think the winemakers, making great wine. So they're starting to understand that certain areas you can't do certain things, you know. And obviously, I mustn't forget the role that chemistry can play. There are a lot of guys using chemistry to, you know, make chemical wines, as I call it. But with time, you know, it's been proven. You need good soil. You need, and you've got to, like I said earlier, you've got to marry your cellar. I always said when I built all these open cement fermenters, I built my cellar to suit my fruit. You know, and it's always been
a lovely line.
Yeah, I said to suit my fruit. So we do open fermenters and stuff, and that's interesting that we didn't do with the Cinsault. I made that totally reductive to retain those flavors, and which was unique. Previously we always had a Cinsault, and we were doing punch downs. But you see, the husk of a Cinsault is very, very thin. It's a mushy type of thing, and but that's how you find out. You've got to like do something different, you know.
Well, it's a wine. I'm not making promises, but I'm hoping we might be able to see a little of it slip into the Dan Really Likes Wine store with Norman Goodfellows online. So watch this space. That's a wine, as I think all of them are ones that mean a huge amount to you. But even within that, there are some wines that are going to have just a little bit more meaning, but also possibly ask you a couple more questions when you decide how to make them, what to do, and how to get the best out of them. And I think this is probably top of that list, because this here is a wine I had over the Rugby a few weeks ago. This is the number 6. And there are a few things I've heard, Scott, so you have to clarify these around the name. That some people suggest that it refers to your son Schalk Jr.'s jersey number. Some say it's the number of varietals in. The one that I've heard from Professor Alan Lamb of the Nottingham Institute of Wine is that it was on bottle number 6, that at lunch they would say, "No, Schalk, you're kicking off in an hour. It's time to start the game."
Anything's possible with Labby.
Tell me about this number 6 and why it's so special.
Well, you know, in trying to do something close to your heart and passionate and as much, you know, many people go and put proprietors blend and stuff like that. And I thought, what is unique to us? Now, what's very interesting is that my son Tian, my son Schalk, myself, although I didn't play many, we all played provincial rugby in the number 6 jersey.
Yeah.
So that was quite unique. Obviously, Schalk made the number 6 jersey his own in the world, and he's the only number 6 ever to be made Rugby Player of the Year in the world. And to this day, still the youngest ever. He was only 21 when he did it, with that wild blonde mop floating around.
Which is long gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and unlucky it's gone due to the terrible sickness.
Indeed.
Yeah, when he went through the coma and so on. But then what we tried to do is, okay, what's unique? So we said, okay, let's take 6 cultivars. And we put 6 cultivars together, but we wanted to be Syrah based, and that's why it's also in the Burgundy bottle. And it's very unique. So there's actually Viognier in here as well. So it's, out of its Ronald background. So there's even Petit Syrah, which not many people in South Africa have got. And we've got
also known as Durif.
Durif, Professor Durif. And can you believe Professor Durif and Professor Perrault created Pinotage at the same time in Montpellier at the university there. And then we've got Mourvedre and we've also got Cinsault in there. So the interesting thing was the first year also we only did 6 barrels. And out of that we've only done 4 batches. And each one has been a multiple of 6 batches. So there's some of it floating around the world. There's first, second, third, fourth. And at this point in time, we predominantly comes in a beautiful black box. So, and it actually goes out by allocation. So we keep it very quiet so that people, and there are some guys in Johannesburg who get it. I see you've got Mr. Mandla there the other day. He's one of our guys on the list, and he's always complaining we can't get his fair share. But, and that's how we've kept it, you know, it's just something very special. So at our house also, somebody comes to us. So the number 6 became, you know, obviously one day I was telling the story and an Afrikaans minister stood up and he said, yeah, he's from the order of Illuminati, the 3 6s. You remember that whole thing? I said, oh, please, just, you know, it's not about that, you know. So some people said actually Schalk's number in rugby was 9. So they said, no, 6. He said, well, you saw so many times upside down. You actually saw more 9 than when you saw 6. You know?
Well, look, the dark arts of the Illuminati, coupled with the fairly dark nature of a number of these grapes, led by Mourvedre, it often has that dark, broody nature to it. It's probably not inappropriate, because the dark arts of a number 6 at the bottom of a ruck or maul, or a loose hand in the scrum, there's definitely a parallel there, Scott.
No, very much so. You know, and this wine through years has just been incredible. You know, I don't think you can replicate it, because even tasting this one now, you're quite correct. It's gone very much more dark, you know, and that's the beauty of blends. You know, you drink them in various phases, and even like this Viognier, you know, we went through a phase like 2-3 months after bottling, where I said, no, it's over. There's something missing, and now tasting it today, it was just so beautifully, you know, sublime. And this is, you know, with this wine too, you know. So what we'll do, we take of the best barrels and put them together, and it's I think, you know, if in this industry, it's a tough industry, and to do everything, you know, from looking after your own grapes and your own labor and your own farm and stuff, you know, there's got to be passion, you know, and that's where I think families sometimes do better, because it's not always just about the return on your investment and so forth, because the family's also living off the farm, and I'm glad I can do that. And my daughter, you know, Renee, she's up in Johannesburg. She helps us do a lot of export stuff and so forth. And other than also looking after her husband, who's a musician, you know, so we are a little bit, the family is expanded. And, you know, my little granddaughter's even got a Portuguese passport now.
This week is a really important one for not just your own wine. You get to showcase the wine we've tried now and a range of others to a fairly influential audience. It takes wine from a number of other Johan's friends, as well as Johan's wine himself, but also just a broader South African showcase, because the people that are coming into this event, they're either global celebrities or they're very influential business leaders, entrepreneurs from around the world. And yes, they're going to go back and say, oh, I had some of that number 6, I had some of that Pioneer, I had some of the Antonio Rupert blend, and it was amazing. But just as importantly, they're going back to America, going back to Asia, going back to Europe, going, I had some amazing South African wine. And I think that's probably where our very good mutual friend Johan really does deserve kudos. He's taken this platform to show some really important people just how good the best of South Africa can be.
Well, you know, let's be honest, you know, nobody can sell South Africa better than Johan. And, you know, because many people, I think many people don't realize when they're buying one of the phenomenal products that Richmond has got, that it's actually South African that's heading this whole conglomerate. And, you know, there's so much bad things, you know, around the world being said about South Africa. But when you're in an environment like this, we're able to showcase South Africa. You know, everybody knows he's South African. He talks and he speaks. He doesn't change his accent or whatever. And he's like a, you know, it's like, he's like the troop leader. You know, here we are. You know, there are a lot of South African golfers and good golfers, and the wines and the good times and just understanding South Africans. And, you know, I was just yesterday chatting to you, and, you know, he's battling with his ears now. And I think how many years the two of us have been coming here, maybe 25 years prior to the Links Championship and the Tico Torres and these guys. Now they've gone, and I was today in the Callaway van, and there's a Root Philip, you know. Godverdomme jonge man, you know, the two of us always beat one another. And it's just phenomenal. I can go up through the years. And I think this event, what it means as an export product for South Africa, you know, the wines is not the part, but just the people getting to know South Africans. Because there's no other place that you can actually meet up with so many people, a vice president of, a previous vice president of America and everything. So, and you're so right. And I don't think Johan gets the kudos. And I would like to make use of this to say thank you for what he does for the country. You know, and an opportunity for guys like ourselves, you know, all the sportsmen living in the Rusaks and all the things we get up to, but the wonderful times that we have.
Yeah.
you know, and it gets marketed outside of the country. And, you know, I'm just privileged to be a little part of it. For many years, a part of it. But I mean, it's just, you're quite correct, that just it takes South Africa a little bit ahead at the right level.
I must ask you, as we come to the end of the show and prepare for what is one of our favourite weeks of the year, about an extra special element. We have touched on it briefly at the start of the show, but two Schalks on the show today with Schalk Stapelberg, two Schalks playing in the tournament this year. Schalk Junior makes his debut. For so many reasons that's special. Johan has been such a close part of your family, so to have him playing, he played with Johan through the Saracens space. He was also somebody who, as we know, we weren't entirely sure was going to be with us for a while. Such was the nature of the illness and the medical challenges he came through. But he came through them with typical Burger fortitude. And now you're able to spend this week sharing this tournament with your son. Yeah,
you know, it's very special. And you know, also just while you're talking about that, another event that Johan put together, the Laureus, you know, Schalk, the Laureus comeback of the year.
I remember we were there together, sharing tears.
And then I'll never forget this television reporter coming to me and saying to me, I was very proud of his son, 1 out of 8 billion people to win the comeback of the year. And I said to him, there shouldn't be an award like this. He said, wow, what do you mean, Mr. Burger? This is fantastic. And I said, no kid must put his parents through that anguish to be able to win an award like that. No, look, it's in 2007, my son Tian doing previous World Cup was my caddy year, when outside people could still caddy, and we came third in the competition. To the big disgust of my wife, the Sunday we qualified for the final round. That's when South Africa nearly lost against Tonga. Instead of also being in Marseille, we were here. And, you know, I don't want to let out, but I think I'm going to be on Thursday teeing off at St Andrews with Schalk in the same form as me.
That's magical.
And, you know, life is a very simple thing. In that I didn't live for these funny kinds of accolades and stuff, but to be able to, and you know, when I wrote the book, you know, it's about moments. And you know, a moment can be a split second of seeing something beautiful, bad, or whatever. And we try and remember the good moments. So, you know, being able to stand in front of the RNA and tee off with my son inside the ropes, it's going to be one of those beautiful moments in life.
I'm going to goosebumps just thinking about that.
Yeah, so I'm very privileged and that Johan, we were actually hunting in the canoe when Schalk was there, and Johan decided too many people asking, why is it Schalk? The wrong Schalk is playing there. So I can maybe get a DQ next year. But it's going to be special. And again, you know, that's what makes Johan unique. But this competition, you know, being able to do it, live through that, and that's wine's also about moments. Opening a wine, enjoying it with somebody. You know, I always say, many people, you know, they get me to sign a bottle of wine and they're going to take it home and they're going to put it. I said, no, please drink it, but keep the empty bottle. So they said, what? I said, you know, empty bottle tells a much better story than a full bottle. Put it up there and let it remind you. So,
it does indeed.
And in my life, I would like to think, when it ends, the bottle's empty.
Oh, I think there'll be many of them, and many great stories to tell. Schalk, before we wrap up and say goodbye and thank you for your company, which is always enchanting, I must ask you for a little advice and guidance, because I've received an invitation this week to an event I've watched play out from afar and seen the after effects of from time to time. The aforementioned Professor Lamb has invited me to a wine lunch on Wednesday, which I know you are something of a fixture of. It includes Lord Ian Botham, who has a fondness and a great aptitude for wine as well, and a couple of others who are taking part in the tournament. What should I prepare for in terms of this particular gathering?
Well, seeing that I'm one of the founder members of this, and me and Ian and Lammy and Jeremy Ord and Paul Harris and David Curry, you know, passed away.
I remember it fondly.
And we've you know, the water comes up around the thing. So we've actually dragged the tide in and out and then back. As you can think how long that's been. So this beautiful little restaurant, you know, when I started, we always used to go to the R&A route, you know.
Yes.
When I said Wednesday is rest day, you know, because we want to play after that. So, firstly, accept the invitation.
I have.
Secondly, look after yourself. We normally get a good wine that's going, and we'll just flatten all the stock. The owner actually, sadly enough, passed away last year, but his son's taken over there. And we'll eat of the beautiful, most beautiful food. We'll have a lot of laughs. And then there's this big deck chair outside. Right? And there have been some very memorable photographs taken. There's people who've climbed into this deck chair that couldn't get out of it, you know. So, but it's just a wonderful fun day. I've a lot of good guys, you know, and I've been privileged there. You know, there's a lot of wonderful guys, a lot of friendship. You know, I think friendship is such a real friendship. It's a scarce word in the world these days.
And I think that's a wonderful note on which to finish, because friendship is such a definitive element of this particular week. It's also defined some of the wine we're drinking today, made by friends and family and made in celebration, in the case of Dirty's Bubbles, of a great friend, and brings wine and golf and rugby together all very nicely. Scala, it's always a delight having you on the show. Let's hope that we are lifting some more glasses of number 6 and more to the Springboks, with 3 more victories to come, we hope.
Where the Boks go?
And possibly even a playoff, Burger versus Burger in the team competition on Sunday down 18 at the Old Course.
That would be phenomenal.
Go Burger, it's always a pleasure. And thank you.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks for what you're doing for the industry. Let's not forget that. And you've come from let me call a Lappa side, you know, a guy out of the sticks there, Zim through Ikes, you know, not the real,
not the traditional path.
Not the traditional path, but I mean your passion and your love for the industry. I think I don't think enough people value it. So well done that we can be sitting here looking at a beach where Roger Bannister ran
Chariots of Fire many years ago. Yeah. Oh dear. All right, well that wraps up what's been a really lovely start to the week. We've got a full week at the Alfred Dunhill Links Championships. I'll be back on the show on Thursday with Antonio Rubert. I'm not even sure his title is anymore. Head of Giving Us Lots of Wine. I think Gareth Robertson joins me, not just with the wine of the tournament, but also an event on his near horizon. He's part of a 4-person South African tasting team that's going to be competing at the World Blind Tasting Championships in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. So look out for that on Thursday. Keep following us on social media and look out on the Dan Really Likes Wine store. I'm going to do my best, see if we can sneak some of that award-winning Cinso onto the Dan Really Likes Wine store with Norman Goodfellows. Have a fabulous week, and from the heart of Scotland, surrounded by the South African wine of Velveduct and some wonderful company, catch the tournament on SuperSport. Look out for the burgers in the playoff on Sunday, and look out for me on Thursday, trying to recover from lunch with Scala and Lamy. This is Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Norman Goodfellows, live from the Alfred Dunhill Links Championships in Scotland. Goodbye.
Goodbye.